Freedom Day by Rosie Smiler, Thomas Mayer, and Samantha Campbell. My name is Rosie Smiler. My grandfather, Vincent Lingiari, was an Australian hero, the greatest hero this country has ever seen. People sing songs about my grandfather, about what he and my people, Gurunji people, achieved for Australia. I want to follow my grandfather's footsteps. His footsteps started with our ancestors long ago. Let me tell you about the pathway they made for us, from then to now. My grandfather and I were Gurunji people, and we have been connected to the lands and the waters southwest of Katherine for tens of thousands of years. Before 1879, my ancestors lived a life of peace and abundance. Our laws and social systems were the most advanced in the world. In our law, the land, plants, and animals are part of us. We all have our place. But in 1879, a Katia, white person named Nat Buchanan, rode his horse into Gurunji land. To my people in them days, who had never seen a Katia or a horse before, the mounted Katia looked like something from another world. Buchanan acted friendly, but little did we know his eyes were hungry, seeking a place to make lots of money, and he found it in the bountiful grassy plains that were our home. 5 years later, Buchanan came back, accompanied by his family and thousands of hungry cattle. The government in Adelaide had granted Buchanan vast swathes of our land to build a cattle station, even though no one in Adelaide had seen or met us Gurunji people. Politicians made this decision under their law, not ours, without us, as if we never existed. As Buchanan moved onto Gurunji land, life became very difficult for my people. The cattle trampled and chewed through the best grasslands. Our sacred sites were violated. Our meeting places, hunting grounds and waterways were fenced off. Our food supplies became scarce. They called themselves settlers, but to my people, they were invaders. The Katia believed Aboriginals to be less than human because we were black, and because of the differences in our language, laws, and way of living with the land, our culture. It suited the invaders to think this way, because by believing we were not human, it was easier for them to do cruel things and take our land. Aboriginal people began to starve. If we took a cow to eat, entire families were ambushed and killed as punishment. We can still see bones from these massacres, like the skulls of Blackfellow's Knob. Aboriginal people were treated like this all over Australia, where Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were once 100% of the population. Now we are merely 3%. In those hardest times, our men were captured and enslaved to build the first stockyards. They worked with heavy chains around their necks. Soon, most of our men, women and children worked for the Katia. What choice did my people have? We lost our land, our access to traditional food supplies, and our waterways. Everything was taken from us. Our way of living was broken. When a very rich British man, Lord Vestey, bought the lease from the Buchanan family, life didn't get any easier. The Aboriginal workers did 16-hour days of back-breaking labour. The men taking care of the cattle, maintaining fences, bores and equipment. The women cooking, cleaning, washing and ironing. The children running errands and fanning the Katia. The elders hauling the sewage from the Katia outhouse. Aboriginal workers were only paid in mere rations, a bit of flour, beef bones, tea and tobacco. There was no shade or materials to build a comfortable shelter. The water supply was distant, so we were forced to carry water pails on our shoulders so family could drink it and wash. To shelter from the hot winds in the day and cold winds at night, Gurunji built windbreaks from stone. You can still see them today. With all the work, there was barely any time for ceremony, relationships, social activities, or caring for our land. All the things that were important to us. The station manager couldn't even give my people time off work for funerals. Aboriginal people in them days not really all that long ago. My grandfather's time, we were not really workers. We were not free, we were slaves. This has been a sad story so far. It still makes me cry sometimes, but it's important we know the truth. How do you feel about it? How would you feel about being treated like this? Now, the next part of the story is about hope. I want to tell you so you know what to do with those feelings you have inside, and I want you to remember it because it is very important to all of us. Vincent Lingiari, my grandfather, was a leader. He told the Katia they needed to treat Aboriginal workers with more respect, but every time he tried to get the Katia to pay his people properly and let us live a happy life, they wouldn't do it, even when sometimes they promised they would. That's when we decided, sometime soon, we would walk off the cattle station to protest. We wanted to live on our land, our way. When my grandfather broke his leg yoking a donkey, he was sent to a hospital in Darwin. When he was there, he met a friendly Katia who worked on the wharf, Brian Manning, and two Aboriginal men, Dexter Daniels and Tudawali. They were from the union. A union is a group of workers who want to help other workers. They promised to help us if we decided to walk off on strike. We found a mate. When my grandfather got back to Wave Hill Station, he told the station manager that Aboriginal people wouldn't work for nothing anymore. He said they would walk off. He was so brave. The station manager begged them to stay, saying he would double their pay. Vincent said, "I'm sorry, but you couldn't think of that in the first place when we'd been in this job." On 23rd of August 1966, more than 200 courageous Aboriginal people walked off Wave Hill Station following my grandfather. They were men, women, Karu, children, and old people from Walpuri, Mudburra, Ngirian, Billinara, and Gurunji First Nations walking together. As they walked west, the morning sun was at their backs. Long shadows were cast before them. I imagine my old people were frightened to be standing up to the Katia. Perhaps their shadows reminded them of the family lost in the massacre times, but they were brave. 16 kilometres they walked, carrying their babies and everything they owned, towards the only place that wasn't owned by Lord Vesti on Gurunji country, a place that we call Libanunku. Halfway there, the Karu were struggling. The sun was so hot, it made them tired, thirsty and hungry. They tried digging for water at a dry creek bed, Lingiari, and found none. Over the horizon, a Murunku policeman came galloping on a horse. The Murunku was known among my people for being harsh towards Aboriginal people. He tried to scare my grandfather into taking my people back to work, but Vincent Lingiari would not be intimidated. He was dignified and determined. He kept walking, and the people followed. When they reached Libanyanku, they stopped and camped. Katia, Stockman, the government, and the British Lord Vesti tried many tactics to make us go back. But after 80 years of being treated like slaves at Wave Hill Station, Aboriginal people were determined to fight for equal rights in our land. But where were our mates from the Union? Vincent was worried the promised help would not come. After 2 long weeks of waiting, there was great commotion on the fringes of the camp. Katia coming, Katia coming, the young people were calling out, worried about an attack. But then they saw it. It was Dexter Daniels, and he was with Tudawali, Brian Manning, and a friendly young Katia boy named Kerry Gibbs. They had driven from Darwin in a green Bedford truck full of supplies. Help at last! My grandfather, always real calm, said to the Union men, "It's good to see you. We've been waiting for you fellas." For 9 long years, my people continued their protest with the help of our Union friends. My grandfather and other Gurunji leaders travelled to the big city of lights. They talked to many Katia people who also became our mates. Eventually, one of our mates became the Prime Minister. His name was Gough Whitlam, and he promised to give our land back. On 16th of August 1975, my grandfather stood with the Prime Minister at Dagaragu, the community Gurunji built, while we protested. The Kartiya leader of all Australians picked up a precious handful of our land, leant in towards Vincent Lingiari, the leader of the Gurunji, and poured the sand back into our hands. We had won our land back. We could now live on our land, our way. I'm proud of my grandfather's legacy. The Gurunji leaders of today are continuing that legacy. We are building a strong, vibrant community. But now let me tell you about some unfinished business. We have our land, but we still need to have a voice. We won some land back, but sadly, despite everything we tried, we weren't able to live on our land how we wanted to after all. The politicians wanted Gurunji to live the Kartiya way, but Gurunji just wanted to look after our families, raise our own cattle, and practice our culture on our land without being told what to do. By the late 1980s, years of bad advice and Kartiya taking advantage of us had taken its toll. Some politicians were helpful, but most never listened to Gurunji leaders. They made decisions in Parliament that harmed us. Many of our young people started to lose hope. In 1988, my grandfather died. That's why, in 2017, we wrote the Uluru Statement from the Heart. We want to have a Gurunji voice, coming together with all other First Nations, a powerful voice, so Kartiya can hear us. Our voice can tell Australia the truth. Our voice can help make treaties. Our voice should be in the rule book, the Constitution, as it should have been long ago. The Uluru Statement is an invitation to all Australian people to walk with us, like you, our mates, walked with us, Gurunji, before. A mixture of courage, determination, and helpful mates like you is how my grandfather got a handful of sand. Now, will you walk with us again?